Hello, students. I'm Samuel, sir, your social studies teacher. And today we are looking at chapter number 3 of geography. It's known as our changing Earth. Now, our Earth is always changing, whether it's the surface or whether it's below it. It's always constantly changing. That constant change is known as dynamism, and that nature is the dynamic nature. Nothing remains the same. So there was one person who said this. His name is J. Tuzo Wilson. The Earth, instead of appearing as an inert statue, is a living, mobile thing. That means it appears to be like a statue, like an idol, but no, it's not that. It's always changing. So this is the dynamic nature of Earth, and it continuously undergoes several changes. All the time, it's changing. The distribution of land and water has not always been the same on the Earth's surface as it is today. The continents and the oceans that you know as on date were not the same many years ago. No, there was a man named Alfred Wegener in the year 1912. He put forward a theory known as continental drift theory. He said there was one big continent. It was a continent which was a combination of all the continents of the earth. That was known as Pangaea. Pangaea means all the land. Now this continent, some 200 million years ago, it broke into pieces, and they started shifting. They started drifting, and that theory is known as the continental drift theory. The drifting of these continents, and they have reached the present locations, and still they are moving. Because of their moving, because of their movement, the mountains are rising. The Indo Australian plate, I'll come to that shortly, is pushing against the Eurasian plate, and that is increasing the height of the Himalayas. And a lot of earthquakes in the Himalayan region are occurring because of that. Now, here's a diagrammatic representation of Pangaea. On the left hand side, you have the Pangaea. That this is how the surface of the Earth looked like. There was one sea known as Tethys Sea, the Tethys Ocean, and this land was one big land mass, and that was known as Pangaea. And slowly it spread. Now it's like looking like the diagram on the right hand side. You have the continents, you have the oceans, but it was not always like this. Now, there was a theory known as a plate tectonics theory. This was put forward in the year 1968. The outer layer of the Earth is made up of rock plates known as lithosphere or tectonic plates. These plates move very slowly, few of them only a few millimeters per year. The maximum movement is 15 centimeter per year. And some of the plates, like I told you earlier, they're causing the Himalayas to increase in height. Himalayas increase in height about 2.5 centimeters per year. Now, these movements cause various changes on the surface of the Earth, and the movements of this place occur due to various forces acting on it. Now, if we were to imagine our Earth as big pieces of rocks, this is it. It's like a broken dinner plate, right? And these are huge pieces of rocks. This is on the lithosphere, and below that is a mantle, and they these plates are named. They have various names. There are certain major plates. The bigger ones are known as major plates. There are small plates which are known as the minor plates, and these plates keep moving. They have moved in the past, and today also this is moving. India has got its own plate known as the Indian plate, and it is pushing against this Eurasian plate, and that is why the Himalayas are rising. Now, the forces or the powers which are causing these movements can be of two types, one of the two types, endogenic forces and exogenic forces. Endogenic forces are the ones which are acting in the interior of the earth. And this chapter is mostly concerned about endogenic forces. The exogenic forces act on the surface of the earth. Endogenic forces produce slow as well as sudden movements. Sometimes the movements are very sudden, as in the case of an earthquake, and most of the times it's very gradual, very slow. And exogenic forces are slow but steady forces. They are always happening. The movements of in endogenic forces can be horizontal or it can also be vertical. That means the movement can be on the surface of the earth or it can be from top to bottom or bottom to top. But exogenic forces are always horizontal in nature. Now the examples of endogenic forces are earthquakes, volcanoes and landslides. The examples of exogenic forces are all the erosional and depositional work done by rivers, wind, glacier, sea waves, etc. Now we are going to look at two of the endogenic forces. One is volcanoes, the other one is earthquakes. Now, what are volcanoes? Yeah, you might have seen pictures of volcanoes and they look like mountains, conical mountains. And on the top, they have an opening. That opening is known as vent. Now, this is the volcanoes are located in the Earth's crust, and the molten material comes from within the Earth, from the interior of the Earth, and it comes out from the opening or comes out from the vent. Now, this material which comes out consists of lava and ash. It has got a lot of hot molten rocks. Just imagine that iron is melting at 1530 degrees Celsius. Below that temperature, iron is solid, but above that, iron is in liquid form. Similarly, at very high temperatures, the rocks are also in liquid form. So we say hot molten rocks because there's moisture. Now, moisture at such high temperatures will become steam. So steam is also coming out. Lot of compounds and minerals are there. They burn and they release a lot of gases, and also some rock particles which are near the surface, which are at not very high temperature, they are solid in nature, and these solid rock particles are also thrown out of the opening of the volcanoes. The material form a conical mountain around the vent, and the crater of the volcano is funnel-shaped basin surrounding the vent. Now here's a picture of a volcano, and this one is erupting. It's throwing out all the rocks and gases and steam and ash and molten material and magma and all that. Now, based on the nature and frequency of eruption. Now, listen carefully. It's about the nature and frequency of sorry of eruption. Volcanoes are of three types. They are active volcanoes, or they are dormant volcanoes, or they are extinct volcanoes. Active volcanoes are ones which are still producing some material. Dormant ones are the ones which are not extinct, but they have not erupted for a long time. Dormant means sleeping, asleep. And extinct ones are they are no longer active, they're completely dead. Now let's look at them one by one. So what are active volcanoes? These are the uh, volcanoes also known as living volcanoes, and they keep on erupting frequently, and they hurl out gases and lava and ash and rocks. Now there's a belt of such active volcanoes around the Pacific Ocean. This is called the Ring of Fire, and surprisingly, most of it is below the ocean. Some famous active volcanoes are Mount Etna in Italy. India has got only one active volcano, and that is in the Andaman Sea, and that volcano is known as Barren Island. So, this is Mount Etna in Italy. Can you imagine living in this town? Now, this is the Pacific Ring of Fire. This is around the Pacific Ocean, and you can also see in this map. It's a map is combining two things. One, it is showing all the active volcanoes. The location is almost like a ring, and the red dots, even though they are located in the oceanic regions, are also active volcanoes. And the black lines in the background are the boundaries of the tectonic plates. So here I want you to judge. These are the plates, uh, tectonic plates, and wherever there are weaknesses, that is where these volcanoes are located. And they are located on the boundaries of this big plate. That this big Pacific plate has got a boundary, and just below this plate there must be lot of magma and lot of volcanic activity, and that is the reason why this area has got so many volcanoes. This is our own Indian volcano. This is Barren Island in the Andamans. Now, the second type of volcanoes are known as dormant volcanoes. They are also termed as sleeping volcanoes. This is like a sleeping giant. These are the ones which have not erupted from a long time. And when they become active, they become very destructive. The worst part is it's not possible to predict when they will become active. Vesuvius in Italy is a dormant volcano. This is Mount Vesuvius. It is presently a dormant volcano and nobody knows when it will erupt. In the background, you see the city of Naples. It's a famous and beautiful Italian city. Now, this is the satellite image of Mount Vesuvius, and the surrounding area is the city of Naples. It looks like an injury in somebody's body, and just imagine if this were to erupt, the surrounding town will get destroyed. Now, extinct volcanoes are ones which are no longer active, so they are also termed as dead volcanoes. But there's a big but. One cannot say with complete guarantee that this will remain extinct. That is to say, that they may be dormant volcanoes which have been dormant for several centuries, several hundred years, maybe. So there is no guarantee, there is no certainty to call them dormant. Uh, they cannot be called extinct because only because they are not erupted for a long time, we call them as extinct volcanoes. Now these volcanoes, the crater or the vent is very shallow and uh, often it fills up with water. Now, this because it fills up with water, it looks like a big lake from top, and these lakes are known as calderas. So these are questions which can be asked in MCQs or fill in the blanks. So beware of that. Be careful. Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa is an extinct volcano, and Mount Rainier in the United States of America is another example. This is Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. This is an extinct volcano. This is Mount Rainier in the United States of America. Very beautiful. This is also an extinct volcano. Now, about the distribution of active and dormant volcanoes, you have already seen in the map what is the Pacific Ring of Fire. The first distribution is a circum-Pacific belt. Circum means in the circumference, in the borders of what? Of the Pacific Ocean. It encircles the Pacific Ocean. Most of the volcanoes are located in the Andes, that is in the South America, and the Rockies, which are in the North America. And the Mid-World Mountain Belt, this is the one which is, this consists of extinct and dormant volcanoes that lie along the Mediterranean Sea. You have seen two volcanoes of Italy, that is Mount Etna and Mount Vesuvius. They are both lying in the Mediterranean region or the Mid-World Mountain Belt. Mediterranean, the word itself means Medi means middle, and Terranean means of land. Now, the second type of endogenic activity is known as earthquake. Earthquake is defined as sudden shaking of the earth caused by internal forces of the earth. Now, earthquakes send shock waves all around and cause widespread destruction. Now, here you imagine that there's one swimming pool, very calm and quiet, the water is not moving, or some lake or a river, and you take a rock and throw your rock in the water, in the swimming pool, or in the river, or in the lake. Now, what will happen is there will be waves. We call them as ripples. You'll see them in traveling and propagating in circles, concentric rings. Similar also are the waves of the earthquakes. Now, only thing is the difference here is it originates in the interior of the earth, not on the surface of the earth, but below the surface of the earth. Now, the point where it originated is known as the focus. Now, sorry, these waves travel to the surface of the earth, and exactly above the point of focus is known as there's a place known as the epicenter, right? And the intensity is maximum at the epicenter. The vibrations of an earthquake spread out as concentric waves from the focus. These vibrations are called seismic waves. The study of earthquakes is known as seismology, and the scientist who studies earthquakes is known as seismologist. The earth can shake due to movements of lithospheric plates, volcanic eruptions, and even bomb explosions. There are other causes of earthquakes in addition to these, which are not there in your syllabus. The science that deals with earthquakes is called seismology, and there's an instrument known as seismograph, which records the intensity of the earthquake waves. This is a seismograph. Now, if you look at the carrying handle of this machine, it gives you an idea that this is a pretty small instrument. You can pack it, and one person can lift it up and walk. But if you look at it closely, you have one paper roll, and it's having some kind of movement. The paper is moving, and there's one pen here, or a plotter pen, and this is recording the vibrations of the earth. You can make your own seismograph, and this you can take up as a project for your science exhibition. It's very simple. You have to only make suspend a pen. You need to hang a pen, and you need a paper drum which is moving, and the pen should have a fixed weight above it, and the pen should just touch the paper. So if there is any movement, any vibrations, these vibrations will get recorded. So this is what the paper on the seismograph looks like. Just notice that there are three types of waves. The first one is known as P wave or primary wave. This is the primary wave, P wave. The second one is known as the S wave or the secondary wave. So we have primary, which is first, we have secondary, which is second, and then we have a big wave, it's known as the surface wave. Now, primary and secondary are known as the body waves because they are below the surface of the earth. And surface waves are known as surface waves because they are on the surface of the earth. Now, about the three types of waves which you just saw. The primary waves are the foremost and the fastest waves. They are also known as push waves as they cause small displacements and they travel at around 6 kilometers per hour. The secondary waves arrive after the primary waves. These are also known as shock waves. The rate of the S wave is lower than that of P waves, and they produce strong shaking action. Now, something very unique about these secondary waves is they are not able to pass through liquids, they pass through only solids. Now, P waves, the primary waves and secondary waves are the waves which are taking place below the surface of the earth. The last one, that is surface wave, is the wave which have traveled to the surface of the earth, much above, to the ground above where you and I live. Now these surface waves, they travel across the surface of the earth. They are the last to arrive, and they are very powerful, more powerful than the P waves and the S waves, and they cause maximum damage. The reason they cause maximum damage is because they have more strength, no, more power in them, more force in them, and also because all the living living things, they exist on the surface of the earth. All the plants and animals, including human beings, our buildings, our houses, everything are there on the surface of the earth. Yes. And this is the reason why they are the most destructive. Their effect is not observed at great depths. The surface waves cannot be observed at lower depths. Now, there was one scientist, one seismologist known as Charles Richter. In 1935, he devised a scale known as the Richter scale. This is to measure the intensity of the earthquake. Now, this Richter scale has a range of 0 to 9. 0 means no earthquake, no movement, and 9 means the biggest earthquake and biggest movement. Now, on this scale, every next number is 10 times more powerful. The force is 10 times more than the previous number. For example, the number 5, Richter scale intensity 5, is 10 times more forceful than Richter scale number 4, and 100 times more forceful than Richter scale number 3, and so on. The earthquakes are called major if they measure 6 and above on the Richter scale. Now, you may be surprised to know that there are some 1 million, yes, 10 lakh earthquakes recorded all over the surface of the earth every year. Now, if you divide this 10 lakh with 365 days that a year has, it means there are several thousand vibrations felt every day. These instruments, the seismograph is not an instrument which is lying idle. It has got paper and it records every day. Every day there is a recording of earthquakes. But the minor ones we don't even feel. Now, here's a list of major earthquakes in India. Now, we get most of the earthquakes in the Himalayan region because I told you that the Indian plate is pushing against the Eurasian plate. And the Deccan Plateau also records low intensity earthquakes. Sometimes it's very high intensity, especially in 1993, there was a very big earthquake in Latur in Maharashtra. Even Jabalpur is there on the Deccan Plateau on the northern part, and it's not certainly not an Himalayan region. Also, Bhuj in Gujarat, but Uttarkashi and Chamoli and Jammu and Kashmir, they are very much in the Himalayas and they experience earthquake because they are in the Himalayan region. Now, now about the distribution of the earthquakes, we already said that there is a Pacific ring of fire, uh, and coincidentally, the many earthquakes are also happening in that same region. So we call them as the Circum-Pacific Belt. And East and South America and the coastal margins of the North America are included in the Circum-Pacific Belt. And it coincides with the Pacific Ring of Fire, and 65% of the earthquakes of the world, they happen in this region. The next region is again, you have heard of it just a few slides ago, the Mediterranean region. All right. So you have northern and eastern Africa, the Alpine mountains, including extension to Himalayas and the Mediterranean Sea, and 25% of the world's earthquakes happen here. Now, earthquakes are also distributed in the mid Atlantic ridge. Now, what is this mid Atlantic ridge? There is a chain of mountains below the on the Atlantic Ocean's floor. So, and some of the mountains there are having more height than Mount Everest, but they are all underwater. Mid Atlantic ridge and the adjoining islands, that is included in the Mid Atlantic ridge belt, records moderate earthquakes, and these are caused due to the moving lithospheric plates in opposite directions. In India, the Ganga Brahmaputra Valley and the Himalayan region are very much earthquake prone. About two-thirds of India's earthquakes, India's area is prone to earthquakes. This is the end of the chapter. This is a modern plotter of a modern seismograph. The one which you saw on a briefcase was a portable model, but we have models which are permanently uh, uh, established in laboratories, in seismology laboratories. This is a picture of that. So this is the end of the chapter. If you have any questions, you can ask me, and I hope you like this chapter. It's a very easy chapter, but very important. So keep that in mind. You give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video.